good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from wherever you are listening to this podcast. So, I'm your host, Sharath, and welcome to Connect with QA Touch Series 3, where we have some exciting guests who is looking forward for having a funny conversation. So, in this, our main agenda is to have a unfiltered conversation with the tester, with the quality analyst, like how they balance their life and things like that. So, let me introduce you to Akshay. Hello, Akshay. How are you?
Hey, hi, Sharath. It's an absolute honor to be here and pretty excited to be, to be chosen for the show. And thanks a lot for inviting me to your podcast. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for being a part of my podcast because it's really nice to see how internally we are having a very good support, and thank you so much for giving your huge amount of time. It's a huge chunk of your life, and I know I'm always gratitude for this. So can you just give me a quick introduction about you, so viewers or listeners might be interested in knowing you more. So can you just explain about you, like what you do, what are your main things and like that? Could you please?
Sure thing, Sharath. So, first off, hi, everyone. So, this is Akshay actually, and I'm from Bangalore. I'm a graduate of electrical and electronics. So, I graduated from an institute called Cyber Institute of Technology in 2020. So, a little bit about me. I'm a detail-oriented person. So, whatever the task that I undertake or whatever I take, whatever I have an outlook on, so I always ensure that there's always more to it. So, I always have a detail-oriented perspective, and that's pretty much it about me from the personal side. And on my professional side, I have around 3 to 3.5 years of experience in as a tester. So like in both manual as well as automation. So I initially began my career at GTCAP on October 12th of 2020, and then later on, my career path took me towards I think HCL technology. So while I was at HCL Technologies, I was completely into automation, and I worked on several projects, especially on the banking domain. And so, once when I learned, once when I had to, once when I was in a position where I thought that I had sufficiently, I then I kind of just rejoined DTCAP again on July of 2023, and so here I am, so back to DTCAP. So it really feels like back home to be frank.
So it's
So
like
this
so
has
nice
been
to see you back in DC Cap. Like DC Cap, we're eagerly waiting for you to come and join into the Kaiser team. So when you said you were working in banking domain, so I'm just asking out of curiosity, is the testing process in banking domain is completely different from what we do on a day-to-day basis? Like for example, how we work in DC Cap, is that different from a banking domain or a financial institution?
Yeah, so when it comes to domains, e-commerce is kind of different and banking is different, because for example in banking, there are several processes transactions, and then it's all about dealing with numbers, and it's all about creation, and it's all about creation of outward transactions and inward transactions, and you'll also be working with different accounts actually on the monetary aspect. But whereas e-commerce is mainly dealt with B2B, B2C, and you have so many other processes, when it comes to e-commerce domains actually. So I don't find much difference working on the banking domain as well as the e-commerce domain. But what I have come across the fact is that the community says that e-commerce and banking domains are probably one of the most toughest domains to work on, because you have both of those domains are vast and huge, and it's like an ocean, to be frank. It's like the more you dive, it's like the more you dive deep into it, right? So you'll uncover so many number of things, and you'll also come up with so many number of scenarios or complications. So I would say that yeah, both the domains has its own ups and downs, and pluses and minuses.
So thank you so much for sharing that, Akshay. So it's just a question that came to my mind as of now. Like, what motivated you to become a QA? Like, what was the motivation factor, and when did you realize that you want to become a QA or a tester?
Thank you so much for that question, Sharath. Yeah, it all happened in 2020, 2019 actually. So now in my final year. So yeah, I just about on 20, I guess it was in 2020. So like I just about completed my degree, and I wasn't really sure on like what am I supposed to do next, in my with my life actually, So people, at that point of time when I was not really sure on my career path, so like people had suggested me to like go towards the BPO sector or go towards the tech support sector and all. So like they used to say that my communication is good, so that I would be like a much better role into those processes and all. But to be frank and to be surprising, like to be surprisingly that like it was kind of like I wasn't really selected into those particular roles, the BPO sector or the tech support role. And so then, like I was at a point in my life where I had to like ask my brother. I told him that, hey, look, I have my degree right now, but I need to like learn some skills. So like, what would you suggest? And him being a developer, he suggested me testing. And like he made me join an institute in Bangalore called Q Spider. And so from there, my testing career, my testing journey began, Sharon. So it all started off with manual testing, about the whole software development lifecycle process, and it didn't take me like quite that much, to realize that this was what I wanted. Yeah, because like I realized that like a software testing is nothing. It's this thing. It's a detail oriented, it's a detail oriented job, and me by nature, like I'm also detail oriented person. So I felt like like some of my principles aligned with that of the principles that you needed in to become a software tester. So I thought, okay, fine, like this is I guess this is my calling, and I just went off with that. And here I am as a QA at GCAP.
So it was just a call and you just followed your heart and it ended up in being a QA, right?
Yeah, true. Because like like sometimes like as human beings, sometimes we come to like we feel that the position where we be questioning ourselves, like, is this the right thing for me, or like, is this what I really want to do or not? But I guess I guess I should say that I'm fortunate enough to find my calling, and here I am.
Oh my God, that's so interesting to hear. So when you said like you were called to QA, like obviously being like communicating things with other people, like collaborating things with developers and other people in the team is a kind of a tedious task. So how do you manage like in nutshell, like how do you collaborate with developers? For example, if a client is asking for certain requirements, how do you collaborate with the developers and how do you ensure that there is a smooth communication happening?
So as I said, right? So like, like when it comes to the software development process, like we have our own perspective. The testers have their own perspective. The PAs have their own perspective, and developers have their own perspective. So like most of the time, it's all about coming to a common ground of understanding amongst everyone. So like when this is the case, right? So I would say that it's always vital to have clear-cut communication, because towards the end of the day, when you're out there, when you're like trying to deliver something, to the client, or so like you need to ensure that everyone is on the same or is on the same wavelength actually. So it's better to always voice out your thoughts and you voice out your thoughts and opinions actually, like whatever you have, so that we'll all get to know, so that everybody in the team gets to know like whether we're on the right page. So like initially it could be a bit difficult because like as human beings, like we all have our own thought processes and perspectives, right? So it's always like vital to have a clear-cut communication. I mean, whether your understanding is right or wrong, that is kind of secondary. But but the first thing what matters is that it's always better to ensure that you have the right amount of communication.
When you answer that, there is a question that came to my mind. Like humans, you are a person of a lot of principle. Like humans have a lot of principle for living, for aesthetics and things like that, right? So being a QA, when it comes to a professional life, also everybody will be having a lot of principles. So what is the most incorporated principle that you have that you are seeing as a QA in DCCAP? Like, could you be able to share that?
Sure thing. So initially, when I started out my career, right? So like when I was a manual tester, it was like I was just like I used to like get the requirements, and then I was just like taking the functionality of the flow, like whether whether this thing is working as per the expected outcome, or whether if it's working as per the expected requirements actually. But then I thought that there was something missing, and so like on that note, I just had a casual conversation with one of our then business analyst, but now he's a technical accounts manager. So he's Yasser. So at that point of time, like Yasser used to advise me saying that as a QA, it's your responsibility to ensure that you take care of the end-to-end process. That is currently involved. And but apart from that, like he did tell one thing, and that has always stuck by my side throughout all these years. So like Yasser at that point of time told me that as a QA, it's always it's always vital and important and essential to think in terms of a customer, right? So if you're asking me about that, what is that particular principle, right? I think it is nothing but having a customer-oriented approach or customer-oriented principle. Because normally what people think is that as a QA, you're just supposed to check the vital source of the application whether it's working fine or not. But the role of QA is much more than what it is. So as a QA, like you're supposed to like constantly monitor the performance of the application from a technical perspective, and at the same time, you're also like supposed to approach the application from a customer perspective, like whether the application is kind of user friendly, and whether if it's ensuring all the business processes are as smooth as possible. So I would say, yeah, the customer oriented approach is to be able to.
Yeah, that's a very good principle. Like always be customer oriented, like because customers are our end users, right? So they will be in a position to understand the system more than the internal people. So yeah. So when it comes to like since you have a plenty of years of experience in QA, like can you differentiate between like how do you see yourself? Like for example, for 3 years before you were just a fresher, and right now you are in an intermediate level. So how do you see that difference? Like could you be able to quantify the gap or could you be able to tell me, explain the evolution that you have seen in the testing field or in QA field?
To be frank, I still see myself as a fresher even today, because I still feel like 3 years is isn't really that much of a experience to have as a viewer, because like there's still a long way to go, and there's still every single day in the life of a QA it's all about learning new things, and like we're living in a world that is constantly evolving around, with all the new tech stuff that comes along. So yeah, but one thing what I would, like one thing what I've noticed within myself is that I am pretty sure that every single QA in the world can relate to this or resonate with this, because yeah, back in the day, like when I started out as a fresher, right, so like I wasn't really focusing too much about checking, about having a user friendly perspective actually. So, and to be frank, like I still remember, my first project, I was still kind of nervous, and and it was quite tough to to have a communication within the team as such, and I was quite nervous and anxious to even voice out my opinions actually. And so today, like I'm not really focused on whether my opinions are right or wrong, because I always ensure that like I voice out my opinion. And yeah, so like it's all about like having that experience, and it's all about like having both the good days and bad days and stuff, because towards the end of the day, it's always the bad days that always ends up teaching you the most actually. And yeah, the testing world is always evolving actually. So like back in the day, like I started out as a manual tester, and today I'm into automation actually. And like automation, yeah, like even with respect to automation and with respect to the ever evolving tech around us. So like you have AI, you have data structures, and then you have data analytics tools that are that are more quickly getting traction into the market actually. So I'd say that like with every passing year, it's like a whole new view actually. So this is what I.
So when you took the term automation and manual, here comes the question. Like, what do you prefer? Like, it's automation or manual? Because when it comes to the community, like outside the community of testers, like we can see a huge debate is happening between automation and manual. So what are your comments on this, Akshay?
Yeah, like. in the testing world, right? So like there's always this battle of, or there's always this opinions about manual versus automation, actually. But before I come to that, like I would say like what I would prefer. It's not like my preference, because like I would say that I would prefer both manual as well as automation. But let's just say that I would prefer automation as a bit more as opposed to manual testing. But this doesn't mean that I'm completely disregarding the manual testing. To be frank, because because like when it comes to like but yeah, because like like when it comes to like manual versus automation, like it's not like we shouldn't always look at it from from a clash kind of a perspective, actually, because in order to do automation, like you would actually like require the principles of manual test. But at the same time, you can't, from my perspective, like you can't keep just doing manual tests for, for a longer period of time, because that's how I felt initially. So like I started out as a manual tester, and I felt like I did like sufficient amount of manual testing, but then again, like I had acquired skills of automation, and I realized that I had to like work on automation. Otherwise I felt like I wasn't really utilizing the skills that I had learned with respect to automation, actually. So yeah, so like if you'd ask me, both are like very much essential, and like both of them really complement each other. But yeah, like as the saying goes, you can't always keep doing the same thing, for a really long period of time. So like if you're my probable suggestion or advice is that if you're currently a manual tester and you're really good at manual testing, then it's high time that you take up automation. But on the flip side, these days I am seeing another notion where people, like some of the people in some of the people of QA, like as a fresher itself, they'll be directly like working on automation. So for them, I would say that you're actually missing out on the joys of manual testing. So my answer would be this. Both of them would complement that.
Yeah, kind of brutally honest, but I really like that. So that's what we need over here. So,
Yeah.
like just like kind of a non-technical question, I would like to go with like as from these years of experience that you have, like what non-technical skill that you would suggest a person like a tester or the community should have. Like for example, if I do have certain technical skills, then I may be lagging in certain kind of non-technical aspects as well, right? So what do you suggest, like as from a tester's perspective, what non-technical skill do you prefer? Like, do you need to build on?
That's an awesome question again. Sarah. So if you'd ask me, right? So from over the so like from the past 3 years, what I've noticed is that like apart from the testing skills that you have, right? So I think anyone in in the profession of IT, right? So like one thing, I think one vital skill that you need to have is the skill of being empathetic. Actually, so you should so you should actually be. So I personally feel that like we should have this skill of empathy, because like when it comes to a software delivery process, right? So like everyone is working their hardest and their best, towards getting towards a common outcome, actually. So I remember that back in the day, that yeah. So one of the common notions, for testers is that like testers and developers, they always get into conflicts, actually. And so like back in the day, back in the day, like how it used to be was that like I used to like to be in a situation wherein like I would always find myself getting in conflict with the developers, stating that like my findings were right and this was a valid legitimate work, yeah. And then the developers used to come and say that no, that like this is not the thing, like you misunderstood the requirement, so this is not how it is and all. And ultimately, ultimately, like I would get frustrated, and I would just like drop everything, just drop the entire task itself, and and that was kind of chaotic back then. But like over a period of time, what I realized is that that wasn't really a good approach to have, or that wasn't really a nice thing to have as a QA. because like being because being indecisive and being kind of impatient is not really not really good thing, to be, to have as a QA. So then over a period of time, I realized that, like I realized and I felt like we should probably like have an empathetic approach actually. So in one of my recent projects, like I was working with a developer and I kind of had an empathetic approach this time. So this time around, like instead of finding an issue and instead of directly going and clashing heads with the developer. So this time around, like what I used to do was like I used to like sit with the developer and I used to ask him like like this is my perspective, or like what do you think about your perspective, and we used to come to a common ground. And in turn, this time, what happened was that the developer happened to like teach me like so many technical stuff, from his perspective. So then I realized that it's always better to have an empathetic approach. And the other skill that I would recommend is conflict management. Like sometimes you would often find yourself, like coming into conflict with your teammates, or it could be with anybody over there. But yeah, like it's all, but if at all you're in such a situation, it's always vital to like take a deep breath, step back and understand like like why the other person is also feeling that way, so that you could calm yourself and get on with your work.
We are almost to the end of the podcast session. So let's just like enough question I would like to ask as I'm winding up to you. So being a tester, being a person who has been working with different projects with Kleiser and with HCL, with different kinds of scenarios and different environments, like what do you suggest to the upcoming quality analyst? Like what is your advice? Like a solid advice, like as a person who have been experienced since long. So obviously you'll be having certain things that you would like to share to the upcoming QA community, right? So what is that basically?
My advice to the upcoming QAs is that take your time. And like one thing, what I would tell to the upcoming QAs is that it's okay even if you fail, because like nobody gets everything right at the like right from the bat. So if at all you come across a situation where something like there's been an escalation on you, I would suggest them to remain as calm as possible, because I understand like how nervous the situation is, and at the same time since we're in an ever evolving since we're in an ever evolving world around us. So I would suggest the upcoming QA to like be updated with the latest with the latest technology. And yeah, so like today, like we have so much amount of resources out there that we have to like utilize it actually. So my advice, to the new QAs is that like take every day as a learning day. So like ensure that you stay updated with the latest trends that are going on. And yeah, like QA is a wonderful field to be in. So cherish it and embrace it. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. That would be my advice to all the fellow QAs.
So I think all of the QAs should follow the principles and follow the advices that has been shared by Akshay. So once again, before we wind up, thank you so much, Akshay, for this wonderful session. Like really, I didn't even know that the time was just flying away. Like I was enjoying the conversation which I had with you. So it was less, it was so serene, it was so peace, and the way you react to such a situation is so cool. We really liked it. Thank you so much. Vanakkam, Nandri, for being a part of this. And thank you so much. Till the next time we meet, the share at the end. Bye bye.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shiva. Thanks again. So it was really fun to be frank, and to be honest, even I never realized that time just flew by. That was really a wonderful and an amazing conversation. So I would just like to say that you're an amazing host. So keep continuing doing the same thing.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
please
so
maintain the
much.
same energy level and do maintain the same momentum. So thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Bye bye.